which we did, and that was very stressful. But one of the best things that's ever happened to us. So Cambodia gave us our daughter. It gave us another country that we fell in love with and wanted to help, and the country has helped us. I would only be one or two out, but of 103 graduates, I believe we've had around 79 graduates who applied for international universities. And I would say, and I think 76 of those were offered placement.
It's great to have you on the podcast. So we're diving more into the education sector in Cambodia and all of the great work that you've done with Liger. So first of all, we just wanted to start by understanding your journey, getting into the education sector and ending up here in Cambodia. What was the initial spark for coming here and doing what you're doing?
Okay, that could be the whole podcast there. So the short version is I'm Australian, born in Tasmania, of British parents. So moved to broke my collarbone playing rugby when I was 18. So went to the UK for 6 months, and I was going to come back, go to university, and sort of didn't come back. I got to the UK and loved it there. So I spent about 27 years in the UK. What brought me to Cambodia is, my wife is English, and we had a son, and then we had a lot of difficulties through that, and we couldn't have any more children. A lot of reasons and no reasons, we decided we were going to adopt from Cambodia. And Cambodia had just opened to the UK for that year, and there'd only been 9 adoptions to the UK from Cambodia. So I had studied Cambodia, so I knew its recent past. I studied it in school in Australia. That adoption process took us, around 2 years, and the first time I came to Cambodia, I went back and said to my wife, this is not about taking one child out of that country. That country needs some heavy lifting. Now, this is back in early 2000, 2001, 2002. So we need to do something. And my wife was like, hey, let's see if we can get through the adoption process first, which we did, and that was very stressful. But, one of the best things that's ever happened to us. So Cambodia gave us our daughter. It gave us another country that we fell in love with and wanted to help, and the country has helped us as much as we've helped it and its inhabitants. So in 2009 we were going to leave UK to go to Australia with our children, and we decided to have a family gap year in Cambodia. We also had then founded our own charity with another adoptive couple in the UK, the Cambodian children's charity Cam Kids. So we were going to come here and just shore up our projects for Cam Kids, keep our daughter, reunite her with her country. We brought her back every year, but we wanted her to spend some significant time here. And we thought that'd be a great family gap year, and then head out to Australia. So 14 years later, both our children are in Australia. We haven't made it there yet. We ran out of money in 6 months, as it was one of those typical stories of great idea, ill planned. And when we ran out of money, it was either go to Australia now or find some work. And that's when Cambodia opened its arms. And Liger, at that point, for whom I've been country director now for more than a decade, had just found land and was just interested in setting up as a foundation. And that's where my Liger story began.
And talk us through the original idea for Liger and the founder. What was the kind of genesis moment for this idea?
Yeah, well, I found it really fascinating because the founder didn't really ever set out to create an educational model. He wanted to lessen a country's dependence on international aid. And so to do that, education is the tool, because to do that, you need to raise the HR within that country. Then when we looked at education, traditional education doesn't really promote active change agents and doesn't really promote a love for your country. So we decided that it had to be a different sort of model of education. If you want to change your country, you need to understand your country. To understand your country, you need to experience your country. And so therefore that led us to experiential project-based learning pedagogy for the Liger model. I was fascinated because it was the idea of a significant investment in the right few for the benefit of the many. You know, Liger and the founders often said this. Liger was never built for the 100 or 120 students who were there. It was built for all those students and those children, those Cambodians who didn't get there. So the idea was that we could create people who would have the capacity and the desire to help develop their country.
And can you talk to us a bit more about what that means by experiential based learning and how that differentiates to what you currently see in the traditional education model? Sure.
Well, one of my favorite things I say is what you learn inside the classroom can change your life. What you learn outside the classroom can change the world. So you can learn from books, and you do need to learn from books. Yeah. And you know, make no mistake, we do that at Liger. You know, our children are college prepped, but you need to understand real life. I mean, for many, many years, everybody's familiar with the idea that business says there's a huge skills gap between what school is teaching children and what they need to know when they get in the real world. Well, we wanted to bring that real world to school, and therefore, instead of school, it's an education. So part of that is having students fail tested. Everybody knows when you leave school, you don't just head on this constant upward trajectory through life. You fall many times, and everybody has told us that failure is good for you. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. What I tell our students is it doesn't feel good. Nobody tells you that bit. So you have to get used to that feeling. You have to understand that feeling. You have to understand why you failed. Sometimes it's down to you, sometimes it's not down to you. And through doing experiential projects, not synthesized projects where you're imagining what could happen and then you get to your outcome. You know, there is nothing, you can't synthesize human nature. So when you get out in the real world and you're creating a project or you're doing something and really trying to create some change or trying to get to some, you know, definitive outcome, there are so many variables that you can't anticipate. So you get used to failing, and you understand that sometimes it's completely out of your control. So I think with that understanding, that's why experiential project-based learning is so important. Also, it's the only way you can really learn about what your country needs, rather than many people coming in and saying, I know what that country needs. The people living in that environment know what they need. So go out and talk to them.
And could you also talk about the recruitment model? Because I think that's also very unique, a very unique part about Liger, in that you go all over the country to look for the brightest minds, but of those ones that may not have the resources, right, to go to good schools. So maybe just talk about that and how that was unique, and what were some of the challenges doing that in the early days?
Yeah, the challenge is immense. It's one of those things, if you knew what was ahead of you, you might never start it. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's what an entrepreneur does, right? You don't know what's ahead of you, but you start it anyway because you have a belief or a vision or a dream that you want to make a reality, and that's exactly what Liger was. So we've had 3 iterations of the recruitment process because we've had 3 cohorts now come through Liger. The first one, the challenges have been different each time. The first challenge was that we didn't have a curriculum. So, you know, we didn't have a past, we didn't have a history. So who was going to trust us with their most precious possession, their child, right? So that was the hardest obstacle to overcome there. But what we thought, again, as an entrepreneur, what is, to put it in sort of entrepreneurial terms, you know, what is the minimum viable product? So what was the expectation of these parents for their children, that they would be able to go to Cambodian university? We could promise them that. We said, we will get your child to Cambodian university, but we believe we can do a lot more. We believe we can get them a lot further. So once you know that you can achieve your minimum viable product, then anything on top of that is what we needed to build. And so that was really successful. So we only had one parent in the end who said no in the first recruitment. And that was quite astonishing, really. But we still really had to prove ourselves over the first couple of years, because parents were in saying, oh, my child used to be number 1, and now they're not. Now when they come home on holiday, they're not, the child that they always competed with at government school, they're not there anymore. We said, well, it's like training somebody to play basketball for a year and then putting them on a football pitch and expecting them to excel. Like they're learning different things. Those early days, really, the Minister for Education, Dr. Hong Chun Aron, had only just become the Minister for Education. And at very early age, very early times, we were introduced to him, and he came out to Liger. And without his support and belief in the Liger system, we would not have had the success that we've had in Cambodia. He really supported, understood what we were trying to do, saw that everyone we were educating was to the benefit of Cambodia. And he put his whole weight behind that and really helped us.
And so you say that you had three recruitments. Could you also talk about the environment that the students are in? Because usually in Cambodia you don't have that many schools that are boarding, right? So that's also like the campus setting.
Sure.
What's the uniqueness about that, and how did that play out?
For sure. Look, it's the old adage, right, that intelligence is universal, opportunity is not. So in the provinces, especially several years ago, it was very hard to get a good education or get access to a world-class education at least. And so our job was to go out into the provinces and to find these children who we believe with the right education, would be great role models and change agents for their country. So if we skip forward to Recruitment 3, we again worked with the minister and said, okay, by now we have a good reputation. We're known by a lot of people, not just because through the recruitment process, but through all the projects that we do, through and with ministries in all the provinces. So we have got a good reputation around Cambodia. I said to the minister, we really need to now widen our approach on what schools we get to in the provinces. So we need the help of the provincial heads of education. He, again, through his whole support behind that. So we talked to the provincial heads. We asked them to select 5 schools from their province and 5 children from grade 5, 7 from grade 6 from 5 of those schools, which then the local director would choose, bring them to a central location, and that's where we held our first recruitment examination. And then from there, we would, anyone who was successful through that first day, which was a basis of academic knowledge, because it's a very academically rigorous curriculum at Liger. None of this was English. English is not needed or required in any of the sort of entry points to Liger. So if they passed the initial academic rigor, then the rest of that day was leadership games and challenges. Now, the kids just thought they were playing games, but we have metrics by which we are rating them in terms of their leadership and collaboration and cooperation, all these sorts of things. Then there was an individual interview with our head of recruitment, Buntan Un, Cambodian national. And that was also then, with consent from the families, that video and interview was sent back to Liger, where 3 more of our staff, Cambodian, sort of used the same rubric and assessed the child. Then whoever got through that final part of that day, it was a huge day for the recruitment team to be able to do this in all 25 provinces. It was crazy. And anyone who was successful there was said to go home, think of a project, which they've never done project-based learning, so think of a problem or an issue or a challenge in your town or your city or your home community, wherever. And in a couple of months, we're going to bring you down to Liger, and you're going to present that to our students. So we did that. We brought the family down. They would stay overnight so the family could see who we were. The child presented to our current Liger students, who also had a rubric to assess how much of a Liger student they thought this child could be. So everybody at Liger had a part in selecting cohort 3 at Liger, which was, I think, pretty unusual. And we have 60 students all on scholarship in cohort 3, and they represent 24 of the 25 provinces in Cambodia.
Wow. So just so I understand this, for the third cohort, the process in which a student is chosen, it first goes to the representative that's in the province, And from that small selected cohort, they're brought in for kind of a super day, more or less, right? Where there's multiple stages in which they're being assessed on, though it's not necessarily, it feels like an assessment. It's more of just observing and kind of going down the different criteria. And then if they make it through all of that, then they're given a project back in their province in which that they could either improve upon something that needs to be improved on in their community or something along those lines. And a few months later, present that to the greater academy, which then the students are there to assess to see if the presentation is one good, and also if the individual has kind of checked the boxes of what it means to be a Liger student. And then after all of that, they finally get selected to be part of the program. And this is a fifth grader. This is someone who's 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Wow, that is truly impressive.
It's crazy. When I hear it back, like, you nailed it. That's absolutely, you got it. Except there is one more process, which is, again, we said right from the beginning, it's not just about finding the right child. It was about finding the right family. So it was about finding the right family who believed and understood a long-term investment in their child. That what we couldn't afford was to educate a child from 10, 11 years old, and when they're 15, 16, the family takes them back to their home, and they're working in the field, or they're working in their shop or whatever. So that is the final stage. Once that child's selected, then and only then, our social worker and our head of residential, both Cambodian, go out to meet the family, and they do an economic assessment on the family, and just basically a family assessment. So we really need the right family as well to make sure that it's a good fit for Liger. But yeah, you're right. It's pretty crazy.
Wow. No, it's very impressive. Like, when I think back on it, when I was that age, I don't know if I had ever been put through some sort of rigor or some, maybe not necessarily a rigor, but through an experience in which I was being tested on these different levels. And so it's, it just goes to show, and is like a testament to the uniqueness and the success of why Liger Academy is where it is today. So that's, it's really impressive just to think about even just the selection process, and also the fact that the biggest part is the families have to be there for the journey for the entire time, since from 5th, 6th grade to 12th, or wherever you end the line in high school, or secondary school. So
yeah, you're right, mate. Yes, it is 12th grade. You're correct. Yeah, it has been an incredible journey, and to see us now get into so many provinces has really been something very special.
Okay. I was just going to ask, because it sounds like, I think the conversation we had, right, it's like it started over 10 years ago, and it's got to where it is today. What I'm curious about is, maybe in like the first 5 years, what were some of the things people were telling you that you couldn't do this, and like it was never going to be possible to achieve these outcomes? What were some of the classic things that people were saying that you had to kind of overcome?
I think from the time it was, great stories. Great stories. But what do they do after Liger? I love what they're doing. I wish I went to a school like this, but what happens after? What are your metrics? Give us that. And so, well, if you want to do something new, how can you judge it by old metrics? It just doesn't make sense. But people like tradition, and everybody, again, there's an old saying, like, everybody's an expert in education because everybody had one. So inherently people don't like change. They're scared of it. And so we were challenging education at its core, really, and saying there is time to do this in secondary school. It's not just things you can do in kindergarten or primary school. And when they get to secondary school, you do have enough time to do these sorts of things. And project-based learning is interdisciplinary learning. There's science and math and engineering and language in every project that you do. So we were told, what happens after? And that was probably the biggest one. Great stories, and also it's great. It's it's a foundation, and it's not replicable, and you can't scale it. So all of those things have still been said to us all the way along the line. There's just so many reasons you're told you can't do something. And we're just like, well, we'll tell you why we're going to do it.
It's a perfect segue to, as you say, the outcomes. What happens after Liger. So maybe let's talk about that. When did you first get to the point where the first cohort was able to apply for universities, and then maybe just talk about what that process has been like and some of the successes that you've seen sending students all around the world on full scholarships?
Sure. Look, I think that the one thing about Liger and the one thing about being an entrepreneur is that, which Liger is an entrepreneurial organization, is that you can't stop growing, you can't stop evolving. You've got to stay ahead. You can't say, I've nailed it, so let's stop here. Right? The world is not stopping. The world is changing all the time. So if we don't keep evolving and changing, then we are going to be left behind, and we're going to be a victim of everything else that everyone else is. So we first had our graduates in 2020, as you know, sort of the height and the scariest time of the pandemic. So a very hard time to shout about what happens after Liger, because people were more worried about staying alive, globally, and understandably. But what did happen after Liger sort of even surprised us. We had incredible success for students applying to universities internationally. If I jump to cohort 1 and cohort 2, of 103 graduates we've had, I might be 1 or 2 out on this because, again, through the pandemic, we had people accepted to universities and then they decided not to go because of the pandemic. They were too worried to travel internationally. Right. But I would only be 1 or 2 out, but of 103 graduates, I believe we've had around 79 graduates who applied for international universities. And I would say, and I think 76 of those were offered placement. That is an insane percentage of that. So
what would you say let's say a comparable top, let's say, school in Cambodia what would be like a comparable percentage? That,
look, I couldn't even hazard a guess, and let alone Cambodia. I would challenge, please, whoever's listening to this, tell me from any school in the world where you've had those numbers, and it's like 99% where there's 3 people who applied and 2 got in. Like, this is 79 who applied and 76 who were offered. Right now, in August this year, we'll have 60 of our 103 graduates, 60 of them, in 9 different countries. All on scholarships. 38 in the US alone, at colleges like Princeton, Dartmouth, Wellesley, Cornell. Like, these are high level. In Japan, political science, in Nagoya, in UBC, in Canada. I mean, it's crazy. In Turkey, so we're in Europe, North America, Asia. It's all over the place. So 60 is quite phenomenal. Since 2020, Liger has secured in excess of $6 million US in scholarships for our alumni, for promising young Cambodians. And again, I would challenge anyone in the world to sort of come up with those sort of figures.
Right. Do when your students apply for these universities, do the universities ever reach out directly to Liger Academy just to learn more about what Liger Academy is just in general?
For sure. We are not an internationally accredited curriculum. We are recognized here, and we were the first school in the country to have our diploma recognized as equivalent to the grade 12 exam. So our students don't do the Khmer curriculum. They don't have to sit the grade 9 or grade 12 exam. So universities, yes, absolutely, reached out to us and spoke to us, to our college and careers person, to our education director, to myself, and we had to explain who we were and what we were doing. And I think one of the great things about American selection for university is they really do care a lot about not just what the child knows, but what have they done. And I love that about the American selection process, and I think a lot of other countries could learn from that. So it really is, our students have to do the SAT to qualify for American university, but their SAT scores are good, but what got them into those universities is their stories, what they have done, how they were the youngest ever certified scuba diver in Cambodia, and deploying artificial reefs off the coast to encourage ocean biodiversity back to the region. I mean, they're pretty good stories.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue actually into discussing a little bit more about some of the things that students at Liger Academy end up doing. You mentioned scuba diving as an example, but what are some of the other experience-based learning opportunities that they get involved in?
And it's interesting you said opportunities there, because our first education director coined the phrase opportunity-based learning, and I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, that anybody else has coined that phrase. And it really is about taking the right opportunities, not being derailed by every opportunity, but taking the right opportunity. And then we moved on to develop further and say we have opportunity-based pathways, where one opportunity leads on and builds into another opportunity. Let's say, I can give you one example where we started as a coastal cleanup. And it was the first time Cambodia had been involved in this global coastal cleanup. We went down to Kep and we were involved in that. And that was great. And a lot of people would leave it at that. Well, we met a small NGO down there who was working on a small island off Kep, and was all about ocean conservancy. So we were really interested in that. So we went down and met them. Our students went down and met them. From there, we learned about illegal fishing. From there, our students devised an alternative livelihood for Cambodian fishermen as algal farming, and wrote a thesis, wrote a prospectus on that. From there, they developed LMERT, the Liger Marine Research Team, with the scuba divers, as I said. From there, they were invited to go and present at international marine conference in Malaysia. From there, they were sponsored to do a podcast about Cambodia. And from there, one of those students who went through that whole process in this opportunity pathway is now studying marine biology at Miami University on scholarship in the US. So that's what you call an opportunity pathway. So it's incredible how one opportunity can lead into another one. And some of our projects are big ticket items, like the scuba diving, like several of the books that we've published, like trying to launch a satellite, into be Cambodia's first, satellite into space. They're great, and they're great ticket items, and they're the cherry on top. But honestly, for every product, there's 10 more processes. So the whole point of the project-based learning is that it's process over product. And to circle back to what I talked about earlier about understanding that you will fail at many things, but that you won't get your product. It doesn't mean that you failed. The learning oftentimes has been stronger when we have not reached our end point in a project, because they've learned more about why they didn't get there and how they could get there another time, or they've learned that some things are just beyond their control all the time. So I would say probably 85% of our projects are smaller community-based projects, and then we have our big ticket. Like we have several books. Our first book that published by like 12, 13-year-olds was The Economy of Cambodia, and that was inspired by the Minister for Education, who wrote his own book on the economy and gave it to us and said, he told me, I want to change the Cambodian economy through education. I was like, that's great. I'm not smart enough to read your book. And I wonder, what our students at Liger understand about the economy. And it's a word that everyone knows, but it's very hard to define. And our students didn't know much about it, and how to actually define what the economy was. So we were like, let's be inspired by the minister. Let's write a book on the economy written by children for children. Turns out that book then has been used in Cambodian universities as a reference book. So that's pretty cool that these young high schoolers had written a reference book for universities in their country.
Wow. And you made a point over the process versus the product, and thinking about the years that go into, for example, the multiple years of the marine conservation, which eventually led to a scholarship to study to be a biologist. There's so many different examples of these paths that students are understanding the process, and they may not, create the next Apple or Microsoft then, but once they go to university, gain more exposure, are able to have these scholarships, they're able to continue and further this opportunity afterwards. So in that case, do you have any examples of what students are up to after Liger Academy, after they go to university, or anything that they're currently working on that stands out that you'd like to share?
Sure. I mean, our first graduates were 2020, so those first ones who went away or went to university are just graduating now. So we have several who are graduating in the US. One young lady at Syracuse in the US, and one young man at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They've both been offered to stay by the university to stay on, and been given a scholarship for a master's and or PhD. So that's pretty cool. They've been offered to stay on there. And I wish I had the excerpt from the email that the young man sent me about why he is doing this. And I think that is the crux of a Liger education. You understand why you are learning things, not just to go to the next grade, but I'm learning this because I can apply it. I don't think the acquisition of knowledge is enough for education now in the 21st century. It has to be application of that knowledge as well, and they have to learn that in their educational environment. So at Liger, you don't just acquire knowledge, you apply that knowledge, and so therefore you know why you're acquiring that knowledge. And the young man who's been offered a PhD, really, to sum up, which I'm not going to do it justice, he wants to become, through his research that he'll be doing for his master's or PhD, it's to lead him to become an engineer, a leading engineer in technological advances in agriculture, so that he can come back to Cambodia and lead the agricultural sector in Cambodia. That's his words, not mine. So I think that sort of sums up why we started this. It's still an experiment. We haven't bonded these children to come back, and I know that many other organizations do that. I'm not here to criticize that, but what I am here to say is it was a question we faced very early on, a philosophical question, and the outcome was if these children do not want to either come back or help their country from wherever their life will lead them, then we haven't done our job properly. It's not their fault. We haven't done our job properly to help them understand that they really want to help their country and that they should be helping their country. That's
great. And just to kind of look at present day and into the future, currently, what is Liger Academy set to achieve, or some of the milestones that you're looking to accomplish? Is there any big news that you would like to share of things that are coming up?
There is huge news coming up. Look, this is a world-class education, and so that doesn't come cheaply. As I said earlier, I'm one of the founding trustees of another organization, and we can put a child through our education for $150 US a year, and that's a Cambodian level, government school level, and those kids do really well. But they don't have the ability that you learn at Liger to be a change agent at the highest of levels. So at that cost, it's not sustainable for one person to keep paying for that. And that person has paid for this for more than a decade, which is really phenomenal. We needed to transition. And again, it was one of the things we were told that we couldn't do. You're a foundation, and so you have the luxury of that. You're not in the real education sector. Well, we're about to transition into a fee-paying private school with scholarships. And it's a momentous time for a Liger education and for Cambodia. And I think not just for Cambodia, when we prove that this model of education is sustainable and is applicable in the private sector, I think that opens a door for many more questions about how traditional education is not working around the world. So AUPP are a Cambodian organization. They've been in the private sector, education sector, for more than a decade. And they are coming in to take on the responsibility of keeping a Liger education alive in Cambodia. So it's a huge investment from them over a number of years. The founder, we are licensing the Liger curriculum to AEPP, and what the founder is asking for that is that the 60 students who were recruited from those 24 provinces, that AEPP honours their educational scholarship through to graduation, and AEPP have agreed to do that, which is incredible. So we are really on the brink, and in the next couple of weeks should have everything secured for Liger education to remain in Cambodia forever. So it is with a vision or an idea because of lessening a country's dependence on international aid, spawned an NGO, which then created an educational model, which then became globally recognized, and then now is moving to the next step to become a private, sustainable education system paid for by Cambodians. So the original goal of lessening a country's dependence on international aid, it's been realized in 12 years, which is quite incredible, and a testament to the founder and a testament to everybody who's worked at Liger, and a testament to Cambodians who now will invest in this education.
And how does that make you feel personally, having been part of this journey for such time now? It feels like you've gone through your own experimental based learning project yourself, right?
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, but I'm sort of known for that, and I'm on the verge of it. So thank you very much. When I left London, if you'd asked me what my dream job was, I couldn't tell you. It found me. I didn't find it, and I've worked for myself most of my life. So what I brought was a reality to the education, and I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur and to fail, because I've done it a lot. And I would not have got an interview for the job that I have if I was in UK or Australia or probably America. But the founder had faith in me. I started as a consultant. When they just bought the land, I project managed the first build, and then they kept me on as deputy director when we went on the first recruitment drive, because they knew that I had knowledge of Cambodia. And then in the first year of opening, they asked me to take over as director. Now, that's a huge amount of faith that was put in me. And I was driven to repay that faith, not only from the founder, but the faith from the parents who put their children into an unknown quantity, and to all the people who came to work at Liger who were told this is something different, and they had to, a lot of the traditional teachers, or the certified teachers, had to unlearn a lot of what they had to learn in terms of failure, and learn project-based learning, which was very hard. So there's been a lot of trust over the years, and it's just always been my goal not to let people down, and to advance Cambodia, Cambodia I love dearly, has given me Liger, has given me Camp Kids, has given me my daughter, and has given me true purpose. So yeah, it's undescribable, what it's meant to me.
Yeah, thank you for that. I feel like this, it's been such a journey, and you've now got to this point where you'll be making this big announcement, and it's really the realization of your original vision on what you set out to achieve. Could you also just talk a little bit about like how that will compare to the like current offering in the market, and like how many students will you have in total at the new school, and when will be the first intake for maybe parents listening in that are thinking about where to send their kids to school?
Sure. Well, AEPP were really interested in supporting this and taking this on, but they also had to think about, like, it's a huge investment for them. So they sort of said to us, if you can find 40 students who will enroll for August this year, we'll commit, we'll take it on. Again, we were told impossible. Like, it's January. People are already at that level of education. Parents are booking their kids in a year, 2 years in advance to schools here in Phnom Penh. So there's no way you can find 40 kids. We have 40 kids. enrolled to start in August, and to AEPP's credit, we didn't have the full 40. We had over 30 in April when the decision had to be made, because that was when I had to tell the parents of cohort 3 whether their children had an opportunity to stay and go through a Liger education, or, as agreed when we took them in, that this would be a 2-year education exchange program and scholarship. So AEPP said in April, yes, we will take this on. And since April, we have now got up to 40 enrolled students. The model is set for 60 students per grade. So we would be looking from now every year to take 60 students in to grade 7. We go grade 7 through grade 12. So therefore, the full student body would be 360. What has surprised us of the 40 who have enrolled right now is the huge percentage of whom want to board, and even put on pen, like Monday to Friday boarders. That's really surprised us. But then when you look at the reasons behind that, it's not surprising, really. I think the Cambodian economy has changed so much, and anyone who's in that economic demographic now to send their children to Liger, usually both parents are working, and a lot of schools finish at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so they're having to employ drivers and nannies and cooks to look after their children. They come home after work, often late, and they're like, I don't give my child quality time anyway. So they're like, I love your Liger kids, the respect they have, the knowledge they have of their country, and how they can look after themselves. They learn to look after themselves. So there's been huge interest of the parents wanting their children to board, Monday to Friday at least.
Monday, okay. And the campus will be all set up for that. So when do you think the full campus will be? You said starting this August, up to 40 plus the other 60. So that would be 100, right, in total?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. And then when will you have, like, let's say the full realization of the campus set up?
Yeah, good question. So we love the campus where we are now. Yeah. It's been great and it's beautiful, but it's about 10, 12 kilometres out of town. So it's a long way for parents to bring, or for their children to go. So we'll be there this year.
Okay, yeah.
And again, as part of the agreement, the Liger founder is giving that free of charge to AEPP to run the campus, whilst AEPP intend to break ground on building a whole new campus in Georgian. And so that is a great investment. That's going to be phenomenal. So the vision, the idea is to have that completed by August 2025, at which point we would move everybody from the campus out at Chiponka 8 to Georgian.
Okay. I feel like the intake this year will actually be a very unique experience for them, because they'll be able to experience the old Liger, quote unquote, and be part of that original, as you say, grade 7, the first intake of grade 7.
Yeah, Max, I think that's a great point. I think there is so much. People will often tell you when they walk onto Liger, they can feel it. There's an atmosphere, and that's a culture that's built up over more than a decade. Right. So to have this first intake of students be there and feel that and understand the history of where we are and who we are, I think is fantastic. It really is a great addition to taking these new students on this year. So when we do move to the new campus, everybody there has had at least 1 year on our original campus, and they what we call they're Ligerized. So
right. That's great. Okay, and what will happen to the old campus, out of curiosity?
So the last couple of years, to take in this new cohort 3, who have been there for a year and a half now at Liger, we took out a loan from the current founder, with the land secured against the loan. So our job now, and my job, is to sell that land, and then that land, when it becomes vacant, that land will be sold, and then there will be returned as partial payment of the loan to the founder. It's not going to pay for the whole loan, and it certainly doesn't pay for the $12-15 million he'd put in previous to that loan.
Wow. Well, and could you say anything more about the founder? Well, like what gave him this inspiration to just invest so much money into the country?
Okay, him and his wife are just incredible people. Like, they were traveling around the world, and they just saw, when they didn't have any money, they were traveling around the world and saw things, and just sort of thought, if we ever had the money, we need to try and help these countries rely less on people who are coming from outside and think they understand what these people need, and we need to rely more on the people who are in that country. And so when they did eventually have the means, this was where Liger sort of sprung from. So I'm sort of lost for words in what they've given to this country with not a dollar return. That's not what they set out to do. There was never any, vision or dream or intent to make money out of this. It was to help change the country, and I believe beyond any doubt that they have done that.
Yeah, it's a really great story, and we're really, really happy to be sharing this. Just our final sort of few questions for you as we transition to the end of the podcast. What have been some of the habits that you've had over time that have kind of kept you motivated in your mission? What kind of keeps you going aside from work?
Well, it's interesting you say work. We left London to be less busy because we both, myself and my wife, we both had we had our own company, and we ended up busier in Cambodia than we ever were in London. But if you can wake up every day, there's not one Sunday night when I've gone to bed and thought, oh, work the next day. And I certainly did that a lot when I was in London.
Yeah.
And if you can be busier than you've ever been, and you can go to work and smile every day and feel like, to a large degree, you're still on holiday, why would you do anything else? Like, that's what keeps you going. Like, people say, well, you give so much to the kids. Not me, everybody at Liger. You give so much to the students, to the children. But they have no idea what you get back. And what you get back, that engagement, that love and that care from the students, from their families, how could you do anything else? How could you not keep going? I mean, you don't even feel like you have to keep going. It's just autopilot, and you're just on this incredible ride, up to where we are now. And this now, this next stage is like, okay, it takes care of itself now, and we've sort of brought this. Any sort of startup is like 5 years before you can see if it's, before you would say it's investable. We've done those 5 years. We've done those hard yards. And yet most of the time it didn't feel like hard yards. It just felt like a progression and a natural movement towards something else. And we're still moving. We're still making things better. I think we prepared Cohort 2 better when they left to go to university in June last year than we did Cohort 1. We will prepare the next ones even better. We still see the gaps. And I think what keeps you going is understanding that you can always be better. That goes for you personally, it goes for the community, it goes for a country, it goes for any organization. You can't just accept the status quo. Nothing has ever evolved by doing that.
And from your time with the students, I think you mentioned about a few pieces of advice along the way, but is there any bits of advice that people have given you that really stand out as being like one of the most formative things that have kind of stuck with you over time?
Look, I've had so much advice. I think it would be remiss of me to pull out any one thing. Honestly, if you really push me to say, what has helped me go, it's the doubters more than the advice. It's the people who tell me I can't do something. That's when I just put my head down. I'm like, yeah, well, let's see. Yeah. So it's more that Australian irreverence that sort of pushed me personally.
Right.
And it's like the best advice I can give anyone is what we did. I think in the early years was build a culture and build a community, and from that, when you have that trust, you can do anything. You really can.
Great. Yeah, no, I think to distill that, it'd just be like getting power from the nose and getting energy from people that tell you that you can't do something. Dom and I have definitely got a few of those over the years, so happy to still be on the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Dom, thank you very much for taking the time to sit with us today, and we are really excited to share this to the audience, and keep up to date on everything that Liger's doing in Cambodia.
Thanks very much, guys, and I hope this isn't a one-off. I hope we can come back, and
Yes.
and I hope our alumni can come in and
Yes.
talk to you about the proof of why Liger started and where it is now. The future's bright.
Yeah, fully agree. Thank you, Dom.